December 1944. Deep inside the froze, snow-covered forests of the Ardennes, the United States Third Army was locked in a brutal, desperate struggle to halt the massive German counteroffensive. The Battle of the Bulge was turning into a slaughterhouse, with roads choked by ice, burning military vehicles, and blood-soaked snow. General George S. Patton, Jr. was personally touring the forward firing lines, inspecting cold, exhausted, and shell-shocked troops holding critical crossroads against heavy enemy pressure. Expecting to see broken morale and retreat-minded soldiers in the freezing conditions, Patton stopped his convoy and walked directly into a forward machine gun nest positioned near a vital intersection. Inside the narrow dugout, he found a young private bleeding heavily from a jagged shrapnel wound to his right shoulder. The boy was shivering violently in the sub-zero mud, his uniform soaked through with frozen blood. But his trembling hands were still firmly locked onto the spades of an M1917 Browning machine gun. Surrounded by hundreds of spent brass shell casings and empty wooden ammunition boxes, the young soldier was dangerously pale, his lips turning blue from massive blood loss and hypothermia. Patton's accompanying medical staff immediately moved in, sternly commanding the private to step down from the gun, drop his weapon, and board an incoming evacuation vehicle bound for a field hospital in the rear. The private slowly looked directly at his medic, then raised his gaze to meet the sharp eyes of General Patton himself, and delivered a refusal that sent a shockwave through the entire squad. "I am not leaving this gun, sir. If I retreat right now, the German armor takes this crossroads in 10 minutes, and the whole division gets cut in half." Patton froze in place. Refusing a direct order from a superior officer in an active combat zone was a severe court-martial offense. Refusing a direct order in front of General Patton himself could easily get a soldier stripped of rank, thrown into a military prison, or worse. Did Patton order the bleeding private stripped of his duties for insubordination, or did he witness an act of heroism that changed his entire perspective on the battle? You decide. Tell me in the comments right now, if you were commanding troops in a life-or-death battle, how would you react to a soldier who broke regulations to save his unit? To understand why this encounter became one of the most legendary stories in Third Army history, you have to look at the extreme, existential danger threatening the entire Allied line at that exact moment. The German offensive was at its absolute peak, with heavy panzer divisions pushing hard through the thick Ardennes fog and snowstorms, exploiting thin, scattered American lines. The isolated crossroads held by this small, battered machine gun team was the only roadblock preventing a fully armed German armored column from encircling 2 exposed American infantry battalions. If that single position collapsed, over 1,000 American soldiers would be completely cut off, surrounded, and destroyed within hours. The young private had been holding the frozen intersection for over 14 straight hours without hot food, relief, or sleep. When an artillery shell detonated in the snow-covered pine trees directly above his dugout, sharp steel fragments tore through his shoulder and upper arm, ripping open his field jacket. His assistant gunner had already been killed instantly by sniper fire, and his squad leader lay critically injured in a trench behind him. Standard operating military procedure mandated immediate medical evacuation for any soldier experiencing severe arterial bleeding. The field medics knew that staying in the freezing cold with an open, untreated wound meant permanent muscle damage, rapid shock, or fatal infection. When Patton's staff officers arrived, they saw a soldier who was biologically on the absolute verge of collapsing. His eyes were unfocused, and his breathing was shallow. They fully expected him to gladly surrender his post to incoming relief troops, step away from the frozen steel of the gun, and climb into a warm ambulance. Instead, the private used his one good arm to drag two heavy wooden ammunition crates into position, cleared a jam from the feeder mechanism, locked his eyes down the snow-covered road, and flatly refused to abandon his position. He knew that the relief team replacing him would take at least 20 minutes to dig in and set their sights, and 20 minutes was all the German vanguard needed to break through the sector. The atmosphere inside that frozen dugout turned instantly suffocating. Patton's aides and staff officers stood rigid in the snow, fully expecting the general's legendary temper to explode right there on the front line. Patton was notorious across the entire European theater for his uncompromising stance on strict military discipline, uniform regulations, and aggressive forward movement. Just months earlier, his harsh treatment of hospitalized, battle-fatigued soldiers in Sicily had nearly ended his military career and cost him his command. Patton took two slow, deliberate steps toward the machine gun nest, his heavy, polished boots crunching loudly in the frozen slush. He looked down into the muddy pit at the bleeding private, his sharp eyes fixing on the soaked, dark red bandage hanging loosely over the young man's jacket. The staff officers braced themselves for an explosive tirade. A senior medic quickly stepped forward, attempting to intervene before the situation spiraled out of control. "General, sir, with all due respect, this man is bleeding to death. He needs urgent surgical treatment at the field hospital immediately, or he will not survive the hour." Patton instantly raised his leather-gloved hand, shutting down his staff with a single glare. He leaned down into the narrow trench, his broad shadow falling completely over the Browning machine gun and its young operator. The private didn't flinch or look away. Despite trembling violently from a rising fever and severe blood loss, he tightened his icy grip on the spade handles of his heavy weapon, looked straight into the eyes of the most feared general in the Allied forces, and repeated his stance with quiet, unbreakable iron determination. "With all due respect, General, I stay on this trigger until the main line arrives and locks down this road. You can court-martial me after the war is over." The silence on that freezing ridge was absolute. Not a single officer moved. Patton stood completely motionless for 5 long, agonizing seconds, staring deep into the eyes of an ordinary 19-year-old farm boy from the Midwest, who was ready to defy the highest-ranking commander in Europe just to hold a line in the snow. Ask yourself this right now. When a soldier chooses duty and honor over his own physical survival, is he disobeying orders, or is he demonstrating the highest form of military leadership? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Patton slowly unbuttoned his heavy winter trench coat, reached into his inner pocket, and did something that stunned every officer standing on that frozen ridge. He didn't pull out a court-martial summons, nor did he yell at the young soldier. Instead, Patton took off his heavy leather gloves, reached into the snow-filled trench, and placed his bare hand firmly on the private's cold, bleeding shoulder. "Son," Patton said, his rough voice dropping into a tone of quiet respect that his aides had almost never heard before. "A weak commander follows the rulebook line by line, but a real soldier knows when the rulebook doesn't mean a damn thing compared to holding the line." Patton turned to his personal physician standing behind him and issued a direct command that completely bypassed standard medical protocol. "Get 2 field dressing kits out of my Jeep right now," Patton ordered sternly. "Patch his shoulder right here in this ditch. Administer plasma right next to this gun while he keeps his eyes on that road. He stays on this position until his relief is fully dug in and loaded. And the second this crossroads is secured, carry him to my personal staff car and drive him straight to the regional hospital yourself. The medics scrambled into action, unpacking emergency supplies right inside the trench, while the private kept his sights trained on the tree line ahead. Patton unclipped a silver star rank insignia from his collar, leaned down, and pressed the metal emblem directly into the palm of the private's uninjured hand. "You are not getting court-martialed, Private," Patton said, looking him dead in the eye. "You are getting recommended for the Distinguished Service Cross, but you lived through this fight. Understand me? I don't give medals to dead men who could have survived." Minutes later, as the fresh American reinforcement column finally rolled up to secure the intersection, Patton stood on the edge of the snowbank. As the injured private was carefully lifted onto a stretcher, General Patton stood at rigid attention, raised his hand to his helmet, and held a crisp, silent salute until the vehicle drove completely out of sight. The private had defied a four-star general, saved an entire battalion from encirclement, and earned the absolute respect of George S. Patton, Jr. Why was this moment scrubbed from official archives for over 80 years? Washington historians focused purely on grand division maps, actively hiding stories where junior soldiers successfully challenged direct orders, fearing it would break down military discipline. Yet, for the Third Army, this proved who George S. Patton really was, a ruthless general who demanded perfection but held genuine bravery above all military bureaucracy. Now, I leave the final question to you. Was Patton's choice to leave a wounded soldier on the front line a brilliant show of battlefield leadership, or did it put a hero's life at unnecessary risk? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe for more unedited history, and I will see you in the next episode.
Thanks for watching. Stay curious and keep questioning history.